Hi everyone, my name is Brianna Fisher. I'm on the Solutions Marketing team here at Veritas.
Alex Restrepo, same team.
And we're talking about NetBackup today, specifically VMware Cloud on AWS. So Alex, there has been a trend in the last several years, actually. We have a lot of customers moving to the cloud, and VMware has actually taken a stance on the cloud. So can you talk to me a little about that? Why is this important?
Yeah, VMware has a couple of different deployment models for the cloud. Their big partner, AWS, in terms of how they deployed VMC specifically, is basically just a way to extend the functionality and ease of management that VMware provides for on-premises to the cloud. So you're able to use cloud resources, but still have the ease of management of the VMware interface.
Makes sense. So bringing NetBackup into the conversation, everybody knows NetBackup. We have a lot of functionality on-prem. How is that translating into the cloud when we talk about this conversation?
Yeah, luckily NetBackup, much like VMware, in fact, we'll see some of their definitions, but it's software-defined. And as a result of being software-defined, we're able to go where VMware is going. Very fluid, easy transition in terms of making sure we're there. And of course, NetBackup's taken steps. We as a company, Veritas, is certified with VMware in terms of vSAN, a key technology when it comes to VMC on AWS. And again, just being software-defined, we're able to go where they go.
That's awesome. And I heard you say easy. Everybody likes easy. All right, let's dive in. What are we looking at here?
Well, first of all, again, just going back a little bit to the use case for VMware Cloud on AWS. Here, you first see the AWS instance. And look, AWS is very powerful, but it's also very broad. And so as a result, sometimes it can be hard to get your hands around what's going on in a very large environment. And so VMware goes in with its software-defined data center and adds a layer of abstraction even to the cloud. And so you're able to get a visual that's very familiar if you're familiar with VMware on-prem.
That's important.
But all of the infrastructure behind this particular data center is in the cloud. What we call here, this is a software-defined data center. It's actually in the name there. But SDDC, software-defined data center. And again, this is a logical construct meant to make it easy to manage resources that happen to be on the cloud.
Makes sense.
And then from that point of view, of course, we're going to have NetBackup connecting into it. And so in this environment, what we have here is a NetBackup server that is on the cloud as well, connecting in and protecting that particular VMware environment.
So going off of what you just said, let's talk about NetBackup deployment. We know VMware is on AWS. Does NetBackup have to be in that same deployment? Talk to me a little bit about that.
Yeah, so in this particular lab, what we've done is we've actually set up NetBackup in a separate AWS instance. And so NetBackup is present in AWS. It's not directly in the VMC deployment, but it could be. And so you kind of have flexibility there in how you want to do it. If you're going to put NetBackup in the VMC, generally speaking, we would make a recommendation to not have it in the environment that it's protecting. Then it's kind of a chicken and egg problem if something goes down. But other than that, in terms of deployment models, it's very flexible. And so if you want to deploy it in VMC itself, you can. If you want to deploy it in a separate EC2 instance or AWS instance, you absolutely can. And even if you wanted to use an on-prem server, you could if you had to. So lots of different ways to basically achieve that.
Flexibility, I like that.
Absolutely.
All right, let's dive into NetBackup. What are we looking at?
Sure. So this is the NetBackup modern user experience. And what we're looking here is just the dashboard. So this particular dashboard is obviously tuned to this environment. I think, what we want to click on a couple of things here, the jobs. So if you're familiar with NetBackup of days past, this jobs view is going to look very similar to you. Giving you, again, comfort, just like VMware is giving you comfort in terms of the infrastructure and workload management. In terms of data protection, this is the same feeling.
Awesome.
And then importantly, it'll go ahead and give you a view of the VMware environment. So in this instance, this is this very specific VMC environment on AWS, and that's what we're seeing here.
Okay. And when we're talking about VMs, are these things that can be auto-discovered? We have customers that have tens of thousands of VMs sometimes.
Yeah, agreed. This is obviously a sample environment. It's relatively small.
Yeah.
But every one of these VMs was auto-discovered based on the credentials provided. And so when we set up this account, it went ahead and auto-discovered against the ESX hosts that it was provided, right, from those credentials. Now, you mentioned a problem, too, that some environments can get up to thousands of VMs. And so we're able to do searches here. You could see there's a search function right there, pretty straightforward. And we're able to do VMware intelligent groups. In this instance, we happen to have two, one for Windows and one for Linux, but we can create different types of statements that basically narrow down what's going to display and or grouping together for what we're going to protect. And so as an example, there's a tagging that can happen in VMware. We can leverage those tags to basically identify what VMs we want to target, making it a lot easier for day-to-day management, even for a very large environment.
Yeah, that's awesome. So if you go back to that tab we were just on, I noticed that it said not protected.
Yeah.
So how do we go about protecting these?
That's a great question. So before we get there, just real quick, I want to show you that, look, we do have data protection plans, and these are basically the way we figure out what do we want to do when it comes to protection, right?
Yeah.
Let's narrow it down, right? And so there's a lot of stuff we can click on. I think, we want to refer folks to some more in-depth demonstrations we have available. So feel free to definitely take a look at those. But just to note that there are some protection plans already in place. We could add one very quickly. But once you have a data protection plan, what you can do is you can go to any particular VM. And again, these could be entire intelligent VM groups, not individual. But in this case, they are individual. So we can go to any one of these individual VMs. We could add protection. Let me just maximize this, make sure that we're seeing it right. And so right here, we can just go ahead and click any given protection plan we want. Click protect. And I think, I don't know if you counted, but I think that was 3 clicks.
Yeah, just a couple of clicks and now we're protected.
Less than a handful of clicks. You could have a bad experience in shop class and still get the number of clicks on one hand. So here it's protected. Now if we go back to that VMware view, you can see here that we've applied that to that exact server that we had before.
Awesome.
And so it's now protected. Very quick, very easy and intuitive. This is optimized for tablets. So if you're on the go, if you want to make sure you're up to date on what's going on with your data protection, it's just as easy to use as all the other interfaces you have in your environment.
That's awesome. All right, what else in NetBackup do we want to bring up?
Look, there's a lot of other things to bring up. I think some of the key factors that we want to talk about in terms of differentiation is, file level restores from an agentless backup. And so without installing and maintaining any infrastructure on the guest VMs, so very light footprint, you're able to get, granular recovery, granular restore, and you don't have to have an agent in there for the restore. All of that kind of flexibility you expect from a modern user interface and a modern solution, we're absolutely providing from NetBackup, and again, extending all of that functionality to VMC on AWS as well.
That's awesome. Thank you guys so much for watching, and Alex, thanks for your time. We have a bunch of different videos that we're doing as a part of these series, so please be sure to listen, and thanks for joining us.
See ya.